Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on facilitating community-wide clean energy improvements using PACE financing. I'm Sarah Mills. I'm a researcher at the University of Michigan's Graham Sustainability Institute, where I manage our collaboration with the State of Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. The acronym is EAGLE. The overarching goal of this collaboration between U of M and EAGLE is to help local governments across the state set policies and develop programs related to clean energy. Today's webinar is part of a series we've developed on clean energy and energy management, with the goal of providing local governments across the state with practical advice for taking actions related to clean energy. We hope that by highlighting the work that Michigan communities are already undertaking with respect to energy efficiency and renewable energy, we can demystify it a bit for other local governments. These actions are possible and are already happening in communities big and small, from Southeast Michigan to the UP. And today you have with you two local officials from the center of the state to talk about their experiences with PACE financing. If you can advance, Sarah. During today's webinar, we'll take any questions via the questions feature on the GoToWebinar console. As you can see on the screen, it's towards the bottom of that console. And usually when you start GoToWebinar, that console docks on the right-hand side of your screen. I encourage you to submit any questions that you have as they occur to you throughout the webinar by entering them into this questions field. When you submit a question, it will only be visible to the organizers, so don't panic if you don't see any questions. But also don't worry if you feel shy about asking questions. No one else is going to see it. It just comes to me. And I will be weaving them into the conversation towards the end during our Q&A portion. For today's webinar, if you can go to the next slide, please. I'm delighted to introduce Elise Matz and Todd Williams, who are from Lean & Green, Michigan, which is a public and private partnership that administers a PACE program that's available to local governments across the state. They'll first provide an overview of how PACE, that stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, works, and then tell you more about Lean & Green, Michigan. And then we'll turn it over to Eric Schertzing, who is the county treasurer in Ingham County, and Bob Robinson, the treasurer of Eaton County, who will discuss their experiences as partners in Lean & Green, Michigan. Afterwards, I'll facilitate a panel discussion with all of our speakers and then weave in any of those questions that you submit throughout the webinar. So again, please feel free to submit them as they come to you. Without further ado, I want to pass it along to Elise and Todd.
Well, good morning, Sarah. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. We're really happy to be here today, myself and Todd Williams, President and General Counsel, and thank you to Graham Institute and EAGLE for having us here today, as well as to our illustrious guests, Eric and Bob. So my name is Elise Matz, and as indicated, I am the Government Relations Manager for Lean & Green, Michigan. Next slide, please. And just to introduce the rest of our team here, we are in fact lean. We put the lean in Lean & Green. We're a small team of folks. At the helm is Todd Williams. He recently took the helm after the departure of our former CEO, Bali Kumar, who went to the PACE Loan Group. But Todd has been a trusted man behind the curtain for several years. Administering PACE, doing due diligence on projects, making sure they're a good deal for local governments, and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So, hello, Todd.
Thank you, Elise.
You're welcome. And then we also have not with us today Aaron Pattison, who came on recently as our associate counsel about the same time that I did last November. And bringing up the rear is Christian Koch, our external affairs manager, who's been with us for several years. Next slide, please. So just a quick run through of today's agenda. I'm going to kind of run through what PACE is and why we bother with it, talk a little bit about our process, discuss the market data to show our progress over the years, highlight some case studies, and then take questions, and obviously have a panel discussion with Eric and Bob. Next slide. Okay, so why PACE? Next slide. So the reason that we do PACE is that it helps implement efficiency measures and renewable energy measures. But efficiency is a huge part of the transition puzzle. There's really nothing that has the power to improve folks' quality of life, make businesses and homes more efficient than energy efficiency. We know that 30% of energy consumed in buildings is wasted, and also that there's going to be a lot more building stock in the near future. By 2060, we expect the amount of building stock available to double. Next slide, please. The problem is that these measures can be very expensive for property owners to implement. And there's not a ton of incentive for them to make those investments right now, because a traditional financing tool might require a large upfront capital investment for a long-term payback and utility bills and operations and management costs. So there's not a lot of incentive to invest. Next slide. And that is where property assessed clean energy financing comes in, or PACE. PACE allows the property owner to voluntarily enter into a special assessment with a private lender, and that can be repaid over a period of up to 25 years. So the local government gets a free economic development tool that increases their tax base. The property owner gets 100% upfront financing at a fixed interest rate, and the lender gets the security of the special assessment that's created by the local government. Next slide. So some of the characteristics of a PACE loan, very favorable for the property owner. Again, 100% upfront financing, up to 25% of the value of the property at a fixed interest rate. And a hallmark of a PACE loan is that it has a very long-term payback. Under Michigan statute, it can run up to 25 years. It doesn't have to be that long, but it can be that long. And also the loan is non-recourse, meaning that it runs with the land. So if the property owner makes the investment and sells the property, then the next owner will enjoy the benefit of those upgrades and also be responsible for the assessment. And as you can see, the savings will improve gradually over time. The payment remains low and steady. Next slide. So just to highlight a couple of different programs, we have PACE and we also have PACE Express. Under Michigan statute, for projects that are greater than $250,000, there must be a savings guarantee offered by the contractor. And also an energy audit must conclude that the savings to investment ratio is greater than 1. So meaning for every dollar invested in the upgrades, the property owner needs to be seeing a greater savings. And then the savings guarantee essentially, and actually I'll let Todd jump in, it is somewhat limited, but those guarantees work together to make sure that the project is cash flow positive from day one. Todd, did you have anything to offer about the savings guarantee?
I was going to say, you've got there, you know, it is a really unique aspect of Michigan PACE as compared to some other states. We do have a few sister states that require a savings to investment ratio greater than 1 threshold. There's very few that have the savings guarantee as an absolute requirement. It really is made and meant to protect commercial property owners and provide a bit of assurance and protection to the local jurisdictions that we partner with, that, you know, it is going to be a good project and the risk is appropriately shared across the parties. So.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. And again, you know, sort of for those greater PACE projects, it means that the project is going to be cash flow positive, meaning the amount that the property owner is saving on an annual basis is more than the cost of the special assessment. So for projects less than $250,000, we have PACE Express, which eliminates some of those hurdles to getting to a PACE deal. You don't have to have the savings guarantee or a savings to investment ratio. Those are not required. However, those PACE Express projects can and do result in savings for property owners. Next slide. So what can you finance with PACE? So this is just a quick listing here. It is not exhaustive, but some of the things that have been our bread and butter in the past. So energy efficiency projects, lighting, HVAC, windows, insulation, roofing, and caulking. Water efficiency, including stormwater recapture, low flow toilets, sinks, shower heads, and gray water systems. And then renewable energy, so solar energy, solar roofs, wind energy, electric vehicle charging stations are carved out in our enabling legislation as something that we can fund. Geothermal and combined heat and power. Next slide. and more. We would urge you to think very expansively about this. If an efficiency or renewable energy upgrade saves money, it might qualify for PACE. Next slide. So the bottom line for folks that are new to the concept of property assessed clean energy is that when financing these projects, PACE makes the benefit outweigh the costs for property owners. Next slide. So our process. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of how we work with local governments to implement PACE. Next slide. So just a quick introduction to PACE in Michigan. We were established, or PACE was established by the Property Assessed Clean Energy Act of 2010. It allows local governments to opt in to becoming PACE jurisdictions. And Lean and Green was created as a public-private partnership that serves 48 counties, cities, and townships in Michigan, which right now that comprises over 73% of Michiganders and even more of the business-to-business market. And if you're looking at this and thinking to yourself, my goodness, I am not a person who lives in one of these green shaded areas. We are not, one of the things that we do is work with local governments to help them implement a PACE program. It's not that hard. We've got the paperwork and we'd be happy to talk to you about that process. Next slide, please. So why Lean and Green? Why would a local government want to partner with us? So essentially, we allow local governments all over Michigan to benefit from economy of scale. We implement PACE efficiently with minimal burden on our local government partners, staff, and we'll have Eric and Bob on to talk a little bit more about how that works later in the program. So we were founded in 2014, and to date we've successfully closed projects in 17 of our local government jurisdictions throughout the state. We are experts in CPACE because it is all we do. I think Todd has over a decade of experience being an attorney in the PACE space, both in Ohio and in the state of Michigan. It is a very specific area of the law. And I'm going to run through the process in a few minutes, and I hope I make it as simple as possible for you guys. But the fact is that it can kind of get complicated sometimes. There's a lot of things to coordinate. And so, you know, we're here not only to kind of make sure that the local government is complying with the statute, but also just to, you know, minimize a lot of time and stress that might otherwise come from vetting these projects and making sure everyone's on the same page. Next slide, please. As I indicated before, we are your resource for all things PACE because it is complex. And we do this with no government funding. I know that sounds too good to be true, but trust me, it's not. So we help qualify potential projects and conduct due diligence. We coordinate amongst the lenders, the contractors, and the property owners. And we also hold contractor trainings to kind of bring them into the program and make sure they understand how it works. Next slide. I'm just going to quickly run through the process. So the local government here is kind of in the center of the circle with us. They provide the security to the lender by creating a voluntary special assessment on the property at the property owner's request. Next slide. So the property owner in Michigan, very important to note that in Michigan we have CPACE, which is commercial PACE. We do not have residential PACE. So it can be a commercial property, meaning a hotel, hospital, restaurant, office building. We can do multifamily housing. So anything 4 units and above, easy peasy, we definitely qualify with that. Anything below that 4-unit mark gets into a gray area. We can create a PACE assessment for a nonprofit because it's a voluntary assessment. So houses of worship, private schools, and cooperatives. And we have also done several industrial projects. Next slide. So the contractor designs the project, provides an energy audit, and for those projects greater than $250,000, guarantees the savings to investment ratio greater than 1. Next slide. And then the lender underwrites the project and provides the capital. Currently, we have had 8 lenders who have financed deals in Michigan, and we have more expressing interest in the PACE market every quarter. If you hear of a lender who might be interested in PACE, send them our way. We'd be happy to talk to them about it. It is a competitive market. Next slide, please. Okay, so before turning it over to Todd, I'm just going to quickly go through kind of where we've been over the years, because we're really proud of our growth from when we were founded way back in 2014. Next slide. So to date, we have closed 37 projects since 2015. We are just so tantalizingly close to 38. I don't know if it's officially 38 yet, but we're right there. And that is $80 million rounded in private investment. And you can see in that little chart there over on the right what that kind of amounts to, both in money saved, carbon savings, water, electricity, and also, the money that has put back into the economy and the jobs it's created. Next slide. And we're doing pretty well so far. So far, we have closed 2 or 3 deals and at least $8 million in private investment here in 2021. But as you can see, 2020 was our best year ever. I think, in the initial panic of COVID, there was a freeze and everyone was just sort of wondering what was going to happen. And then in the latter half of the year, before I came on, we started working with folks and closing deals left and right. We really found that it was a good tool to access capital for business owners in a rough economy. And so, yeah, we got a lot done in 2020. Next slide. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Todd, who's going to talk about a couple of case studies that occurred in Ingham and Eaton counties. And then we will talk with the treasurers of Ingham and Eaton counties to get their take on that. So with that, take it away, Todd.
Thank you, Elise. Yeah, we wanted to highlight a couple of the projects that we closed in Eaton and Ingham, particularly. Those counties have been great partners for us since they founded and joined their districts. And honestly, a couple of unique projects that we chose to highlight. There are certainly more. So Ingham County established a PACE district way back in 2012 while we were kind of getting up and running. The company founded a little thereafter. But it took until 2018 for the first project to close. And one thing that I can't stress enough, in enacting PACE and enabling PACE, you're putting in the infrastructure. The project may not happen, may not be a good fit for a number of years, but having the infrastructure in place allows PACE to develop when it's convenient and when it's a good fit for the property owner. And so we do have a number of jurisdictions seeing their first deals coming. In fact, the first 3 deals this year we've closed are the first deals in the counties in which they closed. So I'm super excited anytime we get a first. Ingham County, though, very early on, a very early adopter. 2018 we closed first project. I think 2 projects. We've got another one that might close next month, fingers crossed. And the authorized official is the county treasurer, Mr. Schertzing. Next slide, please. One of the earliest projects I worked on and one of the more interesting ones to me, was in Ingham County. It's 513-515 West Ionia. It's all of about a block away from the state capitol, and a truly historic building. I know Eric loves the building, can tell you in great detail the history of it. It was formerly, I just forget the name, and so I'm not going to give it, a floor shop, and very important, being retrofitted into combined use retail and 6-unit multifamily. Next slide. I think we've got more details. There we go. We're going to include 4 kilowatts of solar power, high efficiency windows, more importantly in my mind, kind of the overarching nature of it, installation of an electric vehicle charging station. Really, this is a building that was empty, or buildings that were empty at the time, and really being brought back to life, and the property owners meaning it to be kind of an anchor for that neighborhood. It's a smaller project. This one right around the $200,000 mark, but it's part of a $1.2 million overall capital stack, which includes tax credits, brownfield credits, and so it's a really complicated capital stack on a fairly small project, but it's instrumental for the neighborhood. So next slide. These are the partners, a little bit, there we go, $247,000 financed, expected net savings above that, additional $267,000 coming back into the project, being financed over a 20-year term with a fixed rate. So it really plugged into a capital stack that was complicated and it's hopefully revitalizing a neighborhood in the way the property owners designed it to. Next slide. So moving into Eaton, 2014 they joined, but the very first PACE assessment there was in 2015, and in fact it was the very first PACE assessment in the state. Eaton County has the honor of having the first PACE project. Was actually the building which houses the MPSC. So truly remarkable that the first one came so fast for Eaton County. So far, they're up to 3 projects, and again, the authorized official is the county treasurer. We do see difference in who the county wants to recommend as their authorized official, which is our point of contact, and somebody that we reach out to on a regular basis. County treasurers are quite common. County executives also quite common. We always love working with treasurers, though, as they tend to dig into the numbers a little bit deeper on us when we call. So next slide. A little bit of a different story. We're not highlighting the very first project in PACE, so I wanted to highlight Hillcorp is technically the owner of the property. Liquid Web is a related entity to that. This is basically a very large commercial building housing a data center. Lots and lots and lots of computer equipment, which amazingly has a very high energy load, not only in running the equipment, but in keeping it cool so that it works in an efficient manner. Liquid Web needed to upgrade their cooling system, or potentially to look for a new building, one that would fit their needs better as they continue to grow out their server farm. And so PACE came in. Next slide. PACE was able to come in and help finance, 24 essentially new units, cooling units, to the building, keeping that property owner there, keeping their tenant, Liquid Web, in the building in Eaton County, and just a wonderful example of how PACE can be used to help keep a building viable for the current tenants. So this wasn't a massive rehab, it wasn't new construction. It really was just about getting the right equipment to keep a property owner in Eaton County and keep them as a viable property owner. Next slide. Hillcorp Properties is the owner. Team Technical Solutions provided a lot of the engineering and data as the contractor. 3.69 financed as a long-term bond, and they expect to net additional 1.5 above it. So on a fixed rate 20-year term. Next slide. At this point, I'd love to hand it back over, answer any questions that you guys have here in a little bit, but definitely get Eric and Bob on to give their perspective. I understand sometimes it's not always, it sounds too good to be true when it comes from Mean and Green, Michigan, and so we love reaching out and bringing in our authorized officials to talk. So thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you very much. And actually, one of the questions that did come in already was about this is too good to be true. So I'm going to pose that to you in just a minute, and maybe use this as an opportunity first to say to folks that have joined, if you have other questions, please feel free to use the question box. Right now, as you're thinking about your questions, go ahead and, or I want to turn it over a bit to Eric and Bob, who are, as Todd noted, the authorized officials in their counties, to kind of, Eric, if you want to start out, so people remember, Eric is from Ingham County. This was the example that Todd gave of the mixed use development. Tell us a little bit about, what prompted Ingham County to join, to authorize PACE, and kind of, what it's meant for Ingham County.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. We had a county commissioner actually that brought the idea up. They were active in this space, so we worked with the precursor to Lean and Green on legal counsel and put together the plan back in 2012, as was pointed out it didn't result in a project for a number of years. I think though one of the questions that people would have is, or county treasurers might have is, well, how much work is this? And there was a little work to do the setup and amend it over the years, but really it's very little. And doing the projects, Todd does a lot of work and has an awful lot of things to worry about, with the people that own the project and the lenders. But from the county government standpoint, I've really found it to be a very easy and streamlined process. The other thing, and I appreciate the project that we have and that is cited, because I think the theme for me of what a lot of your projects have done have really been to preserve history and build upon the history. This building on Ionia in Lansing, Michigan was the Beal Floral Building. That was a two-generation family business for 70 years. Lucille, who ran that after her mother, was on the Lansing City Council for 39 years. Her mother was the first woman elected to the state legislature from our area, the first Democrat elected to represent the city of Lansing, and only the second woman elected at that time in Michigan history to the legislature. So this really preserves a building that has a deep memory in the community, and it gives it a long future life as both commercial and residential. And that is just, for the work I do as county treasurer, for the economic development work I do with our land bank authority, that really is the best testament to what this process can do for a community that I could offer.
Great. Well, thanks for that intro and kind of the inspiring words there, and understanding kind of how Ingham County got involved in PACE. Bob, I wonder if you could provide, a background on Eaton County's involvement. You've got you had the first PACE project in the state, and now the most PACE projects through Lean and Green. So, can you tell us a little bit more about Eaton County's decision to join, and what it's meant there?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me today. Interestingly enough, I first heard about the PACE program through Eric Schertzing, and being both county treasurers in neighboring counties, we talk a lot. And Eric said, well, you should take a look at the PACE program. It encourages green updating of buildings. So we took a look at it. And it's a bit of work to set up initially from a county perspective, and in setting up an actual district for Eaton County that would allow for it. And I thought about it, I guess it was about a year into it, and we were actually approached by a business owner, a property owner who had a project that they wanted to complete for PACE. We hadn't entered into a district yet. We hadn't created one. So we were actually encouraged and prodded a little bit, because there was obviously a demand for something like this for the business community in Eaton County. So we got off the stick and put one together. There's different options. So we had to wade through it with a lot of good help from Lean and Green, who does a terrific job. They do make it easier to put together for us at the county level and municipal level. Finally put the district together and launched our first project in Delta Township, which was a building that housed a rather significant Department of State government. So a terrific tenant, a terrific landowner, a significant energy savings for a Michigan department. So we had a really great experience with it right off the bat.
Great, thanks. There's some questions that came in. I have questions too. Maybe these are things that Bob and Eric can answer from your own perspectives, and that's what I'm hoping that you'll do. But Elise and Todd, if you want to come on and, you know, chime in if there's something that's beyond these two individual county experiences, please feel free to do that. So the first question that I want to ask is about, Bob, you just mentioned the setup, right? Establishing the district. So can you, one of you, walk us through the nuts and bolts of, I'm a county, or it sounds like this is not just for counties. There's some cities that are also involved, and I'm seeing Elise nod her head. So I'm a county, city, township even, that wants to enable PACE financing in my community. What do I need to do? What are the steps?
You take all the documents that Lean and Green Michigan puts together to make this simple, and you run it through your own small bureaucracy of committee meetings and full board meetings, and depending on, you know, the politics or the relationship between the board and the administrator, the county treasurer, that can be super quick or a little slower. You know, ours really went quickly because it had the sponsorship of a county commissioner, and I think our county board and obviously Bob's also just kind of naturally recognized that probably the easiest, the best administrator, I'm biased, but the best administrator for a program that puts a lien on the taxes potentially is your treasurer.
Yeah, and I think it does make sense to work through treasurers in that respect. We are the individuals that handle the tax roll. We can handle the special assessment that's created in order to finance a PACE project. Todd may correct me, but I believe essentially state statute allows a municipality to establish a district for this kind of a program. So working with our Board of Commissioners and hammering out the framework of what our PACE program would be, it did require an approval of the Board of Commissioners to get it launched off. Some of the things that we looked at, there were a lot of options. When we first talked with Lean and Green, the original framework included the ability of the county to have bonds issued in order to finance projects. You know, Eaton County has been real thin financially in the last, well, you know, as a lot of municipalities are in the last 6 to 10 years. And commissioners are very concerned about that. So Eaton County removed that from the framework of the PACE program, did not want to put its full faith and credit behind bonding projects. Consequently, I can say that there has been no problem. I think Todd will substantiate this. There's been no problem in these projects finding private financing. So as a treasurer who tries to promote economic development, the use of private financing, I think, is just an additional economic stimulus for the area.
Two very quick points. If you're interested in launching a program, reach out to Lean and Green Michigan. We certainly have gotten better at the process over time. We do have model documents. In order to pass, it is 2 resolutions, and there does need to be a program report that gets drafted. We have model documents of all of them, and we'd like to plug in and work with the local jurisdiction to see if there's any, pressure points or any issues that may come up. Some counties leave in the possibility of wanting to potentially finance down the road. We always recommend taking advantage of the private lender market and the fact that there's a number of lenders with large piles of money that want to invest in our communities. I'd rather take their money than anybody else's. So, but reach out. We're happy to work with anybody and walk through the process. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. But we're here to make it as easy as possible to start PACE and to administer PACE long term.
Great. Now I'm going to ask the question, that I mentioned before, which is it sounds too good to be true, right? Like you have these documents. So the question to Eric and Bob is, what is the actual cost to your jurisdiction, to your county, to being part of the program? And then this is a question that came from the audience, Todd. How does Lean and Green Michigan get paid? Like, who pays your paycheck? So I'll let Eric and Bob go first, and then Todd, if you can fill that in for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's really time. Not now, let me be controversial as a treasurer. I mean, one of my lines is that time is valuable. Money's just money. I mean, money is this accounting thing that we use to keep track of a lot of things in life. But the Lean and Green Michigan program is just the time of the treasurer as the administrator to help run the paperwork through the county board. But that's the type of stuff that we do every day. So it fits into the flow quite easily.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The projects that we've done in Eaton County have not cost the county anything in terms of capital outlay. It's really the time that's involved. It does take a bit of time. A lot of players involved, a lot of coordination through Todd. I think it's wonderful to have a third-party administrator who really picks the ball up in these projects through Lean and Green. But yeah, it does take some focus on time. They say the time is money, but you really can't buy it, right? I can't pull out 10 minutes of time and sell it to you. So it is that time involvement that is our valuable resource in contributing to these programs.
Before I turn it back over to Todd, and I will, so you can tell us, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, and maybe this will work into the kind of the answer, Todd's answer. The state legislation allows you to do PACE, but not go through Lean and Green Michigan. So from your perspective, Eric and Bob, like if you wanted to do it anyway, is this less time than it would be if you wanted to enable PACE? Is it less time than if you were administering it yourself rather than through the public-private partnership? I assume an answer, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, so I suppose this is a delicate answer, but I mean, we wouldn't be doing this without Lean and Green Michigan. And the question that's going to get answered about how they get paid, because hell, I've asked them the same question. I think they're worth more than they're probably getting. It's why we want projects to happen, because it preserves history, it saves energy, which is a good thing for us and our kids, and it employs a few folks. But they make it simple. Otherwise, it would be a lot of work, because you would have to figure out a way to absorb the legal cost, and you'd have to figure out a billing regime for the folks that come at us. They really bring a very nice package together. Whether or not there's enough business right now for there to be multiples, I don't know. I think Lean and Green has done such a good job that they're probably, the it folks for at least a few more years until the market expands.
Yeah, and I would say the same, Eric. We wouldn't be doing this without Lean and Green. Eaton County is a terrific county. If you haven't been here, come on over. But we don't have the kind of resources here in the county or in the treasurer's office to implement administration of these projects. Lean and Green comes in, they review all the contracting, they review the agreements, they do the analysis with the business owner. They do the analysis of the upgrades. They really are just a terrific turnkey opportunity for us in government to be able to take advantage of. It's a terrific example of government and private partnership. It really is.
Okay, so how do you get paid, Todd?
It's surprising sometimes when I present to boards of commissions or even township trustees that this question does come up. Everybody's always surprised and willing to answer it. We get paid when a project closes, and only when a project closes. It does not mean that we don't take every other project. Honestly, pace is a lot, and economic development, across the board is a lot like baseball. If you're batting .250, you're doing great. We only get paid on the projects that get to the finish line and over the finish line. We take a percentage of the hard and soft costs. Typically it's 2%, though our fee does go down and we do cap it, depending on how big the project is. We do have an ongoing fee as well as an interest adder. But I am perfectly content to work with a project, work with a property owner for 18 months and never have it close. If it's not a good fit, that's great. We want to see projects get done. We want to see the economic development happen, but we never force pace down the throat of anybody. And honestly, for any of our member jurisdictions, if they hear of a potential project, we're here as the resource to vet the projects in the beginning. And so, yeah, we take a payment on every project that we've closed, and it makes it very easy for somebody to go back and calculate what our revenue has been, because we publish case studies showing how big our projects are. Eric, I appreciate the thought that the PACE market may continue to grow and we may face competition down the road. I will continuously point our competition to our case studies and what we charge. And I think once they realize how lean we are, the market is a little tough. So.
The other thing for county treasurers or finance directors or for government officials like our city council members and county commissioners, what Todd has explained for the funding mechanism is really somewhat similar to what financial advisors and bond counsels deal with on any debt issuance. So the parallels there are very tight. Although I think they run a leaner operation than the other side I described. So.
If I could get paid like bond counsel, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of bring it back to this concept, because I've heard this before. It's too good to be true, right? Without the PACE, I think the best way to look at it is without the PACE program, these upgrades, let's say you had a commercial facility that needed $250,000 in energy upgrades. The standard way to finance this is through the private financial market with what, a 3 to 5 year loan. That's what makes these energy upgrades unaffordable. It's a 3 to 5 year time period. So this statute, the state statute, allows for this expense to now be stretched out over a 20-year period as a lien against the special assessment. So what sounds like it's too good to be true is simply, again, getting back into the value of that time, right? It's a 20-year term instead of a 3-year term. We've also found the other concern I've heard is about businesses going bankrupt. What happens if the business goes bad? Well, so far, and I think Eric would probably agree, he'll have to say, so far I've found that the kind of property owners and tenants that are taking advantage of the PACE program are not the kind of tenants that go out of business. First off, we have, as I mentioned, a large department for the state. We've had, auto owners insurance, which has been around for over 100 years, take advantage. Liquid Web, which is a terrific internet infrastructure company. So far here in Eaton County, the types of businesses taking advantage of it are good, strong, what I call anchor businesses that we've been able to either retain or attract to Eaton County. So it's just a good economic development tool.
Yeah, and on my history, my history lesson that I love to bring into life, the nucleus of this started with Governor Granholm and her energy office and some of the leadership there that built into Lean and Green. And what do you know? Our energy secretary under the current administration is Secretary Granholm, who happens to be the second Michigander of note that has been energy secretary. So Michigan is really in the leadership of this at the national level, and that is what these folks are carrying forward. And my goodness, we can be proud of adding an energy efficiency component as a key driver to economic development, because it's good for the environment and our future, and it saves money, and it's the right thing to do.
Great. Okay, so we've covered the is it too good to be true? Before we move on to the who is using it, right, and the projects that are eligible and who's using it, just one more question, is there a risk to local government? Is there a downside? Because what I heard both Eric and Bob say before is you wouldn't be doing this without somebody like Lean and Green to administer this for you. But is there any really downside to a local government authorizing this? Other than this, I guess the time is money. And so you may, as a treasurer, have more of these deals that you have to be part of.
Well, sure, there potentially is. That is life. The component is if the treasurer, if the governmental entity had to step in and force the collection, right? I mean, these special assessments and the debt service, it happens in the private marketplace between good loan providers, a good Lean and Green program that's been set up, and the investor owner of the property. Is it possible for all of that to, blow up? It hasn't happened. There haven't been discussions of it. It is the complicated language in the agreement that I remember reading through a couple times, over the last 8 years. But soon as I get up every morning, I've overcome the biggest risk of my day. You don't know. And so really the bigger risk is not doing it. Yes, there's risk, but there's risk to what you don't do in life. I think the challenge and another commonality that Bob and I have is, so how do you market this? How do you let the business and development community know about it? Well, county treasurers do a pretty good job of knowing the community, so we can promote it. But we work with our local economic development entity, Lansing Area Economic Partnership, that is Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham County in mid-Michigan. And they're part of the knowledge and the marketing and the promotion that gets done. And we've done different seminars over time for bankers and for commercial owners. So it's a little bit of work. Everything has risk. Not doing something has risk also.
Yeah. I think the biggest risk from our perspective would be the necessity of having to collect a special assessment. A lot of people don't realize, and thankfully, but tax collection, I never thought I'd grow up to be a tax collector. But it was good enough for St. Matthews. It's good enough for me. Tax collection is a time-consuming, tedious, and very expensive process. So if at some point we had to interject into a project and enforce our lien through a tax collection, but again, the kinds of projects that we've had completed, I don't see a problem in that regard.
Great.
I would follow up with 2 points. One, there is no risk to the county in enacting an enabling PACE. If you form a district and put the infrastructure in place, there is absolutely no risk, because the county or municipality or township maintains final say over whether a project gets approved after the fact. It is not an automatic that you form a district and a project is automatically approved thereafter. So putting the infrastructure together and creating the possibility has no risk. Individual projects, that's part of what I'm here for, is to help minimize the risk to our jurisdictions as much as possible. I can never make it zero as much as I want to, but we do fight hard to minimize it and shift the risk to the lenders who are getting the huge benefit of a really nice security interest of Bob collecting for them, if something were to happen. But to that point, we have not had any project fall into the full into a full foreclosure enforcement. And of the 1,900 or so PACE projects I'm aware of nationwide, I know of only one that has gone through a full enforcement. One out of 1,900 in the last decade. So, it's still new, it's still young. I'm sure with COVID this past year, that number may creep up, but it is, the lenders are conservative in who they lend to, and the jurisdictions are well aware of each project as it comes through. So.
Great. Well,
and on Bob's point of the tax collector and something that many of us heard on Sundays way too many times growing up, the taxes are a priority lien. I mean, there's a reason this works. There's a reason the lenders enter into this. There's a sweet spot that was just figured out. And what's too good to be true maybe is that somebody figured it out and somebody else didn't and put it together, but Michigan's not unique. And where now Todd or somebody else could weigh in on this, but where the conversations about PACE have been a little different is where there is the residential component. And in some states, and should you have a massive Great Recession like we went through 12 years ago, there could be a little bit of heartburn under a PACE residential program. That is not what we're talking about here in Michigan or today. Mm-hmm. And so for your casual observer that's maybe going through the Wall Street Journal or some financial publications, you read a lot about PACE over the last 15 years. But many of those stories that have raised a few issues have been the residential component, which is not what we're doing here.
And that actually leads to one of the kind of rapid fire. We've got about, 6 minutes left. So I've got two different sets of questions before wrapping it up. And one is about the facilities that qualify. So residential does not qualify based on your slides, but you mentioned first nonprofits qualify. So I want to make sure that that's true. And then the second question is, we're only talking retrofits, right? Like new construction does not qualify. So go ahead and answer those.
New construction does qualify in Michigan, as well as gut rehabs. And so, if you think of a retrofit being over here, just pulling out a furnace, putting a new one, new construction being brownfield or greenfield, new stick all the way up. The gut rehab falls in between of repurposing a building. Yeah, they all qualify for new construction. We require that they're building above code, which is tough. Michigan has a really good energy code and a good business code or building code, and so to get the savings, they must build a greener building than what they have to by as a minimum. So. Yeah.
And I would just say quickly, in one of the slide decks that we have, we put in a case study for the Exchange, which is one of our more recent deals in Greektown. It's our largest deal yet. I think it was something like $13 million that will be invested in making that an extremely energy and water efficient building.
Great. Something that Eric, you touched on before that I want to come back to because it's come up a couple of times is spreading the word, right? Like once my observation is that there are more communities that are, have enabled PACE financing that are participating in Lean and Green Michigan than there are PACE projects. And so how do you get the word out about this? Eric, you talked about working with your local economic development group. Is there other, what have you guys tried or what do you see as the opportunity?
Well, one thing is that, hey, there's a brochure, because I think the most important thing is to get governmental entities that cover all of Michigan to have the program in place. If you have the program in place and the treasurer, county government, city government, the local economic development enterprise knows that, when investors come in to your community, you just talk about it. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. So what I've really tried to do, Bob has been, has done this also in these programs, is to get more governments signed up to do the programs. The private sector investors are there. You just need to be able to tell them about the tool.
more widespread it is, and people don't have to think about whether or not this is an option for them, right? The easier it is. So if you're on the fence, you might be about whether or not to join. It sounds like, you know, that helps pave the way for others.
Bob and I will market this again to all of our 83 colleagues or 83 counties in the state, because every county treasurer should want this. It's easy.
Great. Before we wrap up and I share with folks who are on the line kind of what's coming up in terms of the webinar series, any closing thoughts, Eric or Bob, of what advice you would give to other communities that are considering PACE, other than, well, clearly Eric's going to make the pitch to the 8, well, I guess it's the 40 others that aren't signed up, or however many counties left.
I would say it's just a terrific economic development tool. Quick example, we have a large multi-million-dollar hotel in Lansing that has continued to be a problem for the owner, who paid too much for it, put too little into it in terms of investment to upgrade it, has been trying to sell it, but since the assessment has gone down, he's had a difficult time trying to sell it for what he's got into it. It's an out-of-country owner. A new owner was taking a look at the possibility of purchasing the facility, and I happened to mention the PACE program to the new owner because this hotel facility probably needs $2 million in energy upgrades. Energy has not been upgraded in 20 years in this facility. So the new owner is now looking at purchasing that large hotel facility because of the possibility of a PACE energy upgrade. So it's a terrific tool. It's a terrific tool, and I think all municipalities should get connected with it and give Lean and Green a call.
And you know, I think the climate discussion that's coming out of the new administration in Washington will just naturally help drive all this. I mean, your timing for doing this is just perfect.
Elise or Todd, anything like closing thoughts that we didn't cover today that you want to highlight?
I will leave it where it lies, but you know, with the open offer to, you know, I like talking about PACE and Lean and Green Michigan and what we do. I'm happy to talk with anybody at any time. You know, what we can do to help your communities, what we can do to help deploy PACE and make it as easy as it sounds. So feel free to reach out, emails, phone calls, text message. I don't care. I'll respond to all of them.
And I would just add on to that. Thank you, Todd. I think like if you know about an individual project, like come and we'll get you in touch with Todd. You know, he likes to joke that if he can get people to know as quickly as possible, send them over to Todd O'Grady at Michigan Saves or another program that's going to work better for their needs. You know, we've closed 38 deals in 5 years, and while we're very proud of that number, Dan Gilbert is not shaken in his boots. So, you know, we're here to look for the right deals and work with the local government in a way that, you know, whether it's business retention or historic preservation is going to work for their needs. And I would also just add that part of the reason I'm here is so that we can better talk to local governments and local economic development officials. I am more than happy for anyone listening to come and give a presentation to stakeholders in your county or city that you think should know more about this. Very happy to do it. Keeps me in a job, so please don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all. Well, the panelists for taking your time to share with us today. I certainly learned a whole lot more than I knew about PACE going into this. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and expertise. And also just want to highlight that there's a lot of amazing programs in the clean energy space in Michigan that are going on, and part of the impetus behind this webinar series is really to highlight them. So there's a lot of these things that seem too good to be true, right? So here on the screen right now, you'll see some of our upcoming webinars. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have someone from the city of Ann Arbor talking about what they've done on a Solarize program. This is helping to facilitate rooftop solar in communities by kind of doing bulk buy programs and just more community education to drive attention to opportunities in rooftop solar. And then we'll start a kind of series within a series at the end of March talking about planning and zoning for clean energy. This is one of the my own kind of area of expertise and the kind of too good to be true that Eagle allows me to help communities across the state think through planning and zoning as a free service to you. So if you are interested in any of these, you can sign up on michigan.gov/energy. Under the energy tab that's on the top, there's a communities tab, and the link to the webinar signups, they're right there. It'll also be in the email that comes out immediately tomorrow. There'll be an email from this webinar that will also include the recording. Again, thank you so much, Eric, Bob, Elise, and Todd, for sharing your expertise with us. And for all who tuned in to learn more about opportunities available for your community. Have a great day.